Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. Today we're going to go over our daily technical analysis of gold and silver. Again, this is just my financial opinion. Please don't use it as advice. We'll dive into the charts. I'll let you know what they're saying. And here's my opinion. I'm starting with the dollar. So this is the US dollar index here. Looking at a big picture view, we've got a very large, kind of huge downtrend line coming up. We're coming up to meet it. Probably here at some point. We broke out to the downside of this big pattern here. If we zoom in, you can see, actually, let me go to the 5-year here. You can see that we were chilling in this little pattern here and we broke out to the upside. We'll probably make our way up to we broke through there. Let me back out here just to see where the resistance. We'll definitely encounter some resistance. Just looking to the left, probably around 98-ish. It's probably the first part of good resistance, 98. So we got a ways to move up before the dollar, I think, really comes into some resistance. The dollar is outperforming all the rest of the paper currencies, the toilet paper currencies. They're all being printed like mad. That's why we've got inflation in the dollar. We've got inflation in all these currencies. The dollar is just the strongest of the week. So that's that. Now look at the 10-year yield. The 10-year yield's popping higher today. We were up 5.8% on that yield. So looking at it from a 5-year perspective, that's what I'm looking at. It's kind of almost a reverse head and shoulders. Shoulder, and I can draw that in here. Almost like a shoulder, head, shoulder deal, with rates probably going back up to, I'd say about 2% is the next resistance line. About 2% is probably where I would be looking over the next months or so. Now looking at gold and silver, so I'm just setting the conditions there. We'll start with GDX. So here's GDX. Let me zoom in on the right-hand side. Oh, that's too much zoomed in. 5-year. So 1, 2, 3 humps is usually we get a launch here. Usually. So it's a 3-hump correction almost. I almost see this all the time, and I'll show you the bigger one. The bigger one, it came in here, and then the second hump, and then the third. We've got a 1, 2, and then usually it takes off, or we get one last hump before moving higher. But right now, yeah, it's pulling back in this kind of flag pattern, descending wedge type pattern. Man, these are big patterns. So this is what we're looking at right now. We've got support underneath it. We have been pulling back, looking at it. Obviously had a little bit of a sell-off here. We're probably going to come down and we may even pull back into the $30 range even. But does not mean that's 100% probability. I do think that we are close to a move higher. And that's what this number 3 is here. Maybe we'll kind of come back down here before moving on up. Looking at SILJ, we have a reverse head and shoulder pattern that was developing here with the neckline. We came up and then we got sold back off in the short term here. So the big long term, we've got 1, 2, 3 big humps. We're in this third hump here. Sometimes they like to come and they break out. Sometimes they dip all the way back down to the previous support line, and then they run. I can't tell you what it's going to do, but we can look at what it's doing in the short term to see what could potentially happen. And what we have is a reverse head and shoulders. It's a shoulder, head, shoulder. We came up, but it's been invalidated because it just broke back down here recently. This past, today, it broke back down. Looking at Karora Resources, this is a 5-year. We got that pattern again. Let me back all the way out. 1, 2, 3, and then usually this is going to break to the upside and go. And that's what it's been doing. It's trying to break. Kind of zooming in, we've been coming up. We broke to the downside here recently. I'd like to see if this is going to be sustaining or if it's just going to be a short-term little blip and then we break higher tomorrow. But we'll see what tomorrow has in store for us. If this is just a fluke here, a coordinated event, we'll call it. A manipulation day. And then we'll see if this support line can hold and bring it back up. EXK, zooming out. Again, we've got this big pattern, 1, 2 hump, and then the third hump. We've got a descending wedge. We usually break to the upside after this third hump. It's been doing that. It's been moving on up. Zooming in on the right-hand side over here, we've got a reverse head and shoulders, shoulder, head, shoulder. We broke to the upside, and now we're coming back to the neckline of where the neckline is. We'll see what happens. Some of these other guys, these smaller ones, they've put their patterns in. This is metallic minerals, 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump, and then a break. We broke up. We've gone sideways. We're kind of meandering back. Zooming in on the right-hand side, this is what it looks like. We've got kind of this pattern here that developed, a funnel. It leaked out of the funnel. And then zooming in even more, we came down, and then we were moving on up. And this can come back. It's just kind of going wherever. Looking at Koya, this is Koya silver, not much on the big term. Zoom in, we broke the downtrend, and now we broke that downtrend back below it, and we've got support here underneath it. But it's not looking too good for Koya silver coming back. Today it really blew it to the downside. We'll see if this can come back above its trend line or not. So that's what I'm looking at next. Discovery silver. Looking at Discovery, kind of a clean chart here, just a big move up. Let's zoom in. Zoom in. I don't really have a great pattern here. I can see a V bottom type deal coming with support underneath it at a $1.42. And then if we can zoom out here, it does look like this kind of came up like this almost, and then broke to the downside. We'll see what happens. Looking at AG, spent a lot more time on this one. The 3 hump pattern, the 1, the 2, the 3, and then the break. We went to break, and it didn't quite break, but we're putting in, on the right-hand side here, a descending wedge pattern with another 1, 2, 3 hump. We broke to the upside, and we came back a little bit, but everything looks intact and okay. So it doesn't look too bad still. Let's look at Newmont Mining. Again, this 3 hump, 1 hump, 2 hump, 3. That was back in 2016. It kind of came down, but we shot back up. This is structural. I don't think we can stay down here. They're printing money like no other. Gold needs to account for it, and it will, hopefully, at some point. We're going to look all the way at the right-hand side over here. We got another descending wedge coming up. We broke out of that, and we're still on the right-hand side of it, so it still looks okay. Nothing broken. Let's dive into Yamana Gold. Yamana Gold from a big 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump. Then it broke to the upside. We had a descending kind of wedge with a 3 hump inside of it. Broke to the upside, and then we've got a nice descending wedge pattern. Well, it's a big one. 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump, and we're going to break to the upside if we can get the right market conditions in gold and silver. They stop hammering it down pre-market. But that looks what it looks like. We were coming up, ready to break, and then we got back into the channel. But everything's okay. Doesn't look too bad. Looking at some of the royalty companies, this is SAND, Sand. Sand's looking really good. We have a long-term trend line right where it's at. This is where I like to buy. Going 5-year, going in. Here's the descending wedge pattern, broke to the upside. Little ascending wedge pattern, which we broke to the downside, but right in this area, I think this one looks pretty good. It's probably one of the best looking charts out of the bunch that I've seen today. Looking at Franco-Nevada, this one looks really good too. We've got the 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump. We had a little breakdown, then we launched. And sometimes you get these false breakdowns, and that's what I'm kind of thinking is happening in uranium, hopefully. But we came on up, another 1 hump, 2 hump, and we're putting in the 3rd hump here. And we'll see if this thing can break to the upside. Breaks to the upside, we have a lot of room to move upward. Just zooming in on these humps. Here's the 2 hump, the 3 humps putting in. We'll see if we can break here at some point. But that one looks good too. I think that one also looks like a very good chart. EMX royalty, looking at this big 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump break, and we're putting in another pattern up there. Let's zoom in on that pattern. So what it looks like. Let's zoom in even more. We had a downtrend line. We broke out. We're still above support. Still looks good. We tried breaking below it, came right back above it. So I think it's got good, strong support here at the 260 level. I think that looks good too. Tune Resources putting in, it's right at the bottom. It's holding on. Let's see if we can get some movement to the upside. We got to close above about $1.80. That's what it looks like for Tootin Resources. Big long-term picture view. Doing all. And again, this was the big break there. It was a 1, 2, third hump, a break upward. And now we're in this flag pattern going kind of sideways here. Wheaton Precious Metals, looking at it from the big long-term view, looks really good. We've got 1 hump, 2 hump, 3 hump, and then a break to the upside of a big old pattern. We're at the top of the pattern right now. Zoom in on this. We have another 1 hump, 2 hump, and the third hump is being developed. I'd say it looks good right now. So I like a lot of these royalties. They look really good on a charting perspective. They got these 3 humps going. This can come all the way back down if it has to. Sometimes it doesn't and just takes off. I would say that these are probably where I would be looking, and EXK and AG were the silver ones that I really like. So if I were to look at any of those are the ones that I'd be looking at. AG, EXK, and a lot of these royalty companies that I went over here. Those are the ones that I like. Those are the ones that I'm positioned in more heavily. And then maybe some small little mining companies that I don't hold nearly as large of positions in. If you guys like this type of analysis, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you for listening. This is Finding Value.